The following video contains content some viewers might find disturbing. The views and opinions expressed here are not facts and are nothing more than entertainment. The views and opinions are not facts and do not represent the views and opinions of Xirtus or our channel, and do not necessarily represent or reflect the views of the guests, YouTube, Google, mainstream media, society, or civilization at large, or anybody. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome to Wednesday Ultra. I'm Andreas. How's it going tonight? I feel pretty good. Do you? Well, let's see. Mark. No, I did this backwards. Mr. Douglas, good to have you here with us tonight. I hope you're doing well. You're muted. Oh, we gotta unmute you. Dang it. But it's all right. Mark, while you're there, what's up with you? How have you been? I know you've got some pretty good shows going on. What's up?
Yeah, hello. Another Wednesday Ultra. Always a pleasure to be here. I don't think I've missed one yet. Maybe I missed one early on before I realized how much fun this show is. And I brought someone who I co-host a podcast with today. You see him here. I'll let him introduce himself. And we just got finished recording an episode earlier, so I'm hot off of that. And then Juan and I, my other co-host, who's also here, just did a live stream last night. So
Dude,
so yeah, a lot
legit.
of great episodes lately.
And Seth, you've got a new song out, which I wanted to like, we'll definitely
coming this Friday. It's available for there we go, for pre-order right now. So you can go and pre-order that. This one will likely get me kicked off the entirety of the internet.
Yeah, it's a big deal. I mean, we're definitely gonna plug it at the end of this too, but it's exciting. So I just wanted to say, like, dude,
go pre-order.
Pushing Poison. What could that be about? I just want you guys to take the time to enjoy. Very exciting thing right there.
From
Sorry,
the perspective of the bad men, I'll just.
Yeah, no, I mean, so Friday's gonna be lit. So yeah, exciting to have you here, Seth. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
But I don't know how to start. So you just said you did a show. Let's give Michael one a second to explain. You're new here. Who are you? How you been? What you been up to?
I'm Mike. I'm good. I've been recording with Mark. I'm excited to be here. Mark's talked about the show a bunch, and he said how much fun it is. So I get to experience it for myself. So thank you for having me.
Dude, and Juan from One on One podcast. So we've got Michael Juan on One pod. It's like there's a certain meta continuum of awesomeness there. But Juan, I know you've got some thoughts probably on. I'm not going to say Samhain again. I'm just going to every time I want to say it, I'm going to point over to Mr. Douglas, and he's going to say
Samhain.
There we go. Yeah, or you don't have to do it like that. My bad. But Juan, what do you think? Is it Samhain season? What do you got to say on that?
I actually don't even know who that is, bro. Who is that? Can I Google him?
Yeah, go Wikipedia with your Wiccan magic. The Samhain
Halloween.
You won't find it. It's kind of like if you look for Socrates to find Socrates, you have to type Sam Hain if you want to know more about Halloween. But that'll be some
Socrates and Sam Hain.
Let me bring up, I could just bring up something more reasonable, but I think I'm just gonna focus on this picture for a second of is it Krishna or Rama or Vishnu sitting in the center rug of the CIA in a metaphysical space, while I explain that I saw the new Hocus Pocus movie. Have you guys seen Hocus Pocus 2?
No.
Do you know that there is a Hocus Pocus 2? Like
that's one with the witches or the Easter Bunny?
I did it wrong. Hocus Pocus 2. I'll pull it up here. Here's the deal. It exists. Bette Midler is in this movie. I mentioned it the other day, but I just want to say it again because it's here's the deal in a rough, quick moment. This time around, these teenage Wicca girls summon these witches who are not really evil per se, but they have to find their solidarity in each other or something like that. And they end up, trading the book and their Wicca lives to these younger girls who then get to be the witches of Salem, Massachusetts in 2022. And it's all after they present these witches with lotions at the Walmart that's got the souls of children in it. So that
materialism wins.
Yeah. The option really. Yeah. So I don't know. That's a thing, but it's all because of Samhain. I'm just going to keep doing it because it's a very Bill and Ted move. But the Samhain festival, right? And so it's weird because we tied this back to Hulu's with on Sync Tank. I was talking to Eddie Lin from Taiwan, who lives here, but he knows that the word Hulu, it's like a magical tool that the sorcerers used. It's a gourd that they trap souls in, which is why the name Hulu is that for Hulu.com for their company. So there's this, and it's a great thing. We always talk about Halloween. It's supposed to be this candy company conspiracy. But then, of course, in Hocus Pocus, they point out that, no, it's a very real thing. And there's witches who came to America because they could be free to practice witchcraft and everything like that. But it's also a harvest.
What is a confection candy but a sort of conjuration of metaphysical flavors that don't exist in nature, right? You have all of these things that candy companies create out of virtually thin air.
Right.
What's that one movie with the Snowpiercer where they're making the blocks from the bugs? Isn't there a food coloring that comes from crushing bugs or something like that? Red or something or other?
So, dude, in the movie Witches, they're literally making candy to turn kids into mice so they can eat them, right? So, and Willy Wonka, you could say also is a kind of a sorcerer of sorts who has these. Do they ever show his pygmies, what are they called again? The Oompa Loompas.
Yeah.
They're pygmies in the book, right? Because Fleming wrote about
They're
these-
homunculi, bro.
dude. Look at there you go,
Hey, absolutely.
man. Homunculi. Let's go there. What do you mean? Elaborate.
Homunculi, bro. It's
Mini homunculi.
artificially
Get them started.
created magical little men, dude.
Do you think that they're artificially created?
Powered by chocolate.
Yeah, by alchemy, they're
Well,
artificially created.
At least in the sense that the book creates them. Yes, Oompa Loompa is the way they exist in movies. That's an artificially created. It's created by cinema.
They were supposed to be a saved race by Willy Wonka, right? In the story, he took them and took them under his wing. Was like, I'm going to take care of you and protect you.
Right, because they have like a
little.
The Oompa Loompas are from some weird island. Oompa Loompa. They're from some island that's like a banana republic.
Rhymes. Mm-hmm.
Everybody rhymes all the time, and they eat people. That's the other thing, right?
It's Oompa Loompa.
Wait, they're cannibals?
With 2 O's, Andreas. You gotta search.
Are they cannibals?
Petit cannibals.
How do I spell it? Oompa Loompa.
Oh, you keep spelling it with a U. It's OOMPLOOMP. There you go.
They're the original bad orange men.
Okay, Oompa Loompas, small beings, were preyed upon by various predators that reside in their homeland before Wonka.
It's like the
invaded them.
Smurfs. They're almost made like. And I want to add too, right? We got Francis Ford Coppola. I think cinema, movies, and magic have always been closely associated. The very earliest people who made film were magicians. So that's a Coppola right there. One of the greatest directors of all time, talking about how cinema and magic are closely associated because it is used to MK.
Dude, the illusions.
Stuff people, yeah.
It's a form of dream incubation. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and Hollywood magic wands are crafted out of. So
say it again, Seth. Sorry.
Hollywood is the type of wood magic wands are crafted out of. That's why they call
right.
I mean, everyone.
So it works though on multiple levels as well, or there's a parallel because you mentioned both the witches and Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and those movies are both based upon books by the same author, Ronald Dahl. And if you go and you look at Ronald Dahl's early career, he was like one of the players from Britain that came over to teach the OSS how to become like spies. Like this is like early World War II stuff. So he was like one of the main like writers, programmers from way back then. Like, as they say, like once you join the company, you never leave. And so if you take that in context when looking at both of those stories, which then became movies, you can go and trace it back to this, literally to the CIA or the OSS, beginning. But to bring it full circle to Juan's point is like, there's always this intermingling with magic. And so we can look at any modern state intelligence agency. They all come from like, it begins in Britain and it begins with John Dee. And like, there we begin with like the intermingling of intelligence and magic. And then there's a really strong line of evidence that shows that the intelligence has always been involved from the very beginning of the movie making as well. So it's always, I would say, those three, they're interchangeable.
Dude, what's that thing? The Royal Society of Magicians. Like they've got like a group of the Royal Society of Magicians, right? There's like a whole thing. Like so, all these guys who were involved in science in Britain since the 1600s into now, there's still a group of the Royal Society of Magicians. Where is it at? I know it exists, or magic, something over illusion.
Can I add, because you brought up witches, right? It's making me think that Parsons' great grandmother, like the 7th generation or something, was actually accused of being a witch. She was the witch of, I forgot, but the people who were in charge of the Salem witch trials actually convicted her, and they convicted her, I believe it was 6 weeks or something or other to do something, but she was actually a convict. Parsons is a magical last name. That's why when Parsons' original wife divorced him, she kept his last name because she knew it was some sort of a mantra. I'm gonna have to find the Parsons witch trial, but she was accused of obviously making a pact with the devil and all this good stuff. But yeah, it goes back. He was one of the greatest occultists of all time. So what are the chances? Mary Bliss Parsons, there you go, the witch of Northampton, 1656.
Wasn't the first time Mary Bliss Parsons of Northampton was accused of witchcraft. 19 years earlier, in 1675, she was indicted for witchcraft and imprisoned for 10 weeks in Boston to await her trial. Wow. Okay. So what did she do? What's her deal? Last hurrah, Mary Blaze Parson in the
It was
colony.
really easy back then just to say that you were talking to the devil, and people felt a certain way when they were around her, and some people didn't like her, I guess. So, but I don't know, dude.
Right. I mean, some people, they've done, I saw this, this lecture on witchcraft and brewing, and then across Europe, how many women had been accused of witchcraft because they were making beer. And so that way the Trappist monks could take over the brewing in certain places and, even banish it to some extent. But I mean, I can imagine that it could have something to do with just like women with jobs. Like that could be a thing, just like any women that were trying to keep their positions of occupancy, self-employed.
You're a witch. How dare you?
Or the greenhouse thing, right? Especially if you had any indoor plants, you could get in trouble for that.
Wow.
Sarah Lynn Bridgman was convinced Mary's good fortune was a gift from the devil. Her gossip spread from town to town in the Connecticut River Valley. Many of Sarah's friends and neighbors listened and wondered. They told stories. Several people saw Mary walking out at night, wearing nothing but in her shift. One man followed her and saw her walk on the water. When he reported her, he said her clothes were not yet wet. Okay, so
Sarah Bridgman sounds like the original Karen.
You want some? And she was like, no. And he's like, oh, you're a witch.
I feel like I lost something. How did we get here from movie magic?
Parsons to mama, to great grandma Parsons to back.
What about Parsons?
Jack Parsons is great.
It's a magical name.
Well, but what does he have to do with movies?
I'm just pointing out the influence of
Hocus
magic.
Hocus Pocus 2.
Yeah.
Which
how about what's the guy? Dan
How about this?
Aykroyd.
Mark Parsons lived in Los Angeles.
Yeah, there you go. All right, movies.
He was
Los
the
Angeles.
founder of the Satanic Church of Los Angeles, and we're talking about the same guy, right? Jack Parsons from
JPL.
Yeah,
JPL. Yeah.
Laboratory, JPL. Okay, yeah.
Let's get that mustache face on.
Do you
TV
guys think
there,
he blew himself up? Really?
No. So I did a deep dive on the Universe podcast, and we had an astrologer pull up his death chart and all that. And there are some aspects of it saying, because there is like forensic astrologers that they figure things out. And the story goes that he was handling explosives and he blew himself up. Another story goes that he had summoned a fire elemental. There's another story that says that he was murdered. Another story that he blew himself up making a homunculus, right? But something in his chart points out that he might have faked his death because when he was there, he was unrecognizable, right? He could have just been anybody. They could have put a body double or something, but who knows? I mean, from that case right there, that's a famous case where some cops try to murder another cop. And the guy that got indicted, the people who got indicted, one of the main ones had been released a few weeks earlier before the death of Parsons. So they say that he was the one that actually murdered him because the floorboards folded from the inside up. So it wouldn't make sense that it blew up because it shows, again, there's evidence for a whole bunch of things, but at the end of the day, are we ever going to really know?
Right.
Probably
I think that's
not.
an interesting idea. I would follow the money. I definitely want to believe that Jack Parsons didn't die, because that would just be like an extra level of interesting to the world. But like the thing is, I think they murdered him. I don't know if you can say that, but it's such a long time ago, can't you?
He's been suicided.
He's been suicided, Epstein. But even weirder because he explodes in his own home doing some lab work after already having so much patent royalty expectations. He invents the solid state fuselage that's the pentagonal shape in order to have an air intake. He's got every single jet that the United States is using, and arguably the Soviet Union, anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
The fuel is he's going to get a percentage of the money from each one of those things, which after he dies, that doesn't happen anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's a lot of incentive to disappear this American occultist.
Remember where he was going to go too, before he died.
Can I butt in?
To Israel before he died.
Can I butt in real quick? Juan, I love you, buddy, but you've talked about this on like 600 podcasts, and I think people can go and you could plug it and people can learn all that from you. I wanted to go in a different direction because Xirtus brought it up. You said there's a group of magicians. I think you're thinking of the Society of American Magicians. What's interesting to me about that, and it kind of connects to Parsons. Parsons worked for the government. Well, the son of Sam, right? The Uncle Sam Society of American Magicians, aka SAM.
Sam, I am.
And not to mention this guy, John Mulholland, who was a big part of Society for American Magicians, was a member of the CIA, and he wrote a book about deception and misdirection. So he basically gave them this, it's called the Official CIA Manual of Trickery and Deception. It was written by the magician John Mulholland. But yeah, it's interesting, the inner workings of intelligence agencies and the occult. Parsons maybe was in the more military sector of that, but I would argue that the cinema is a form of the military as well. Like, just
Xirtus, you should pull up the list of all the movies that the CIA or the Defense Department has partially funded and
officially
oversight. Like, they have a crazy list, and it's like movies that have there's some obvious ones like Top Gun and stuff like that are military themed, but then there's some where you're just like, you can't imagine what connection or what interest they've had.
Well, and you have to also check like how many like Paramount had large military industrial contracts, right? Because you had airplane, like it was an airplane company, I think it was Pan Am or something, owned Paramount for a long time. And so their connections to the US military were direct. So it's really ambiguous because it's saying, did they get into Hollywood just to make this one? No, I mean, they own the freaking machine and all the studios, and so it's like
what we call the military industrial complex is really more like a magician's guild, because in order to manufacture war, you have to have consent. In order to manufacture consent, you have to have propaganda, the minds of the people. So this is like real, communication is the original form of magic, trying to convince people, persuade people to your point of view, such as get on a boat and go murder these people you've never heard of. So, I mean, what we call the military industrial complex, I mean, they've been working magic the whole time. And yeah.
A few years into 1900, Houdini's escaping skills had attracted the attention of William Melville, et cetera, to the British Scotland Yard Special Branch. MI9, a division of military intelligence, was responsible for helping service personnel evade capture while possible escape was necessary, collecting intelligence. So this is just talking about how from Scotland Yard into to the MI9 that they started, using magician sorcery. But there's another thing that's not just an American one, that is like the magicians group, that's a royal magicians thing, and a lot of comedians and members of the Smithsonian or lords or whatever are part of this magician guild, and they practice illusion magic, but they also study like Sumerian magic and Rosicrucianism and everything else. It's just that on a facade level, we just do yo-yo tricks and parlor tricks. So don't, as you had to say probably 300 or so years ago. I don't know. But also Dan Aykroyd, when we talked about Dan Aykroyd, or I wanted to show Dan Aykroyd, the deal with his grandmother and great grandmother, they were into occult. The Ghostbusters is based on Dan Aykroyd's ancestry, because they lived in Connecticut and in Canada and had done all these seances and were mediums who would do this, talk to your family of, your dead ghost family or whatever. And also to help get rid of ghosts.
You know what's so weird about that? I had a childhood best friend whose father looked exactly like Dan Aykroyd. I remember saying that to my mom, like, who's the guy from the Ghostbusters and Saturday Night Live and all that? Looks like this kid's dad. And it's interesting, like the intelligence agencies, the occult, all of these worlds have been braided together from the beginning, from their inception, right? So, John Dee and that whole thing. I mean, Parsons is even an example as well of that sort of lineage when you connect him to the witch trials. The truth is, it wasn't just that particular woman or only young females that were, practicing witchcraft. It was the whole society that was doing some form of divination. It is just politically mobilizing for them to,
I mean, there's definitely only so much they're telling you even about Dan Aykroyd. I mean, it says the first Aykroyd to experiment in supernatural was Dan's great grandfather, Samuel Aykroyd. who was born in Sorrington Township next to Kingston, Ontario in 1855, worked as a teacher, but quickly realized his teachings was not the career for him, eventually switched positions in 1894, opened his own dental practice, but he was into supernatural stuff. But, it just shows you.
And I'm going to talk to your dead relatives. It's going to be all right.
It's almost certain, though, that, their family had this same tradition before that. They just aren't sure. Like, so at some point they came to Canada and they had to be kind of quiet about it. But that this is something they were always interested in supernatural. And at this point, you don't have living rooms, right? That whole thing, right? Parlor rooms and stuff. This is fun.
Mm-hmm.
Parlor rooms used to be the room in the house before funerals that you'd keep a dead body for like a week or two. So people could come look at the dead body and make sure that they were dead and just have a lot of arsenic. If you've ever read Edgar Allan Poe. But then the idea was, don't have that. That's gross. Let's get a funeral home together. We'll take the body to the funeral home. And then you've got all these giant parlor rooms. What are you supposed to do with a parlor room? A room literally there for families to walk around a dead body. And like, we'll replace the parlor room with the living room, right? And that's the Americanism of the living room, is just to replace the room for dead bodies, which is
so we're living dead. We're the living dead when we're in
when we're watching television.
Well, instead of looking at a monolithic coffin, you're looking at a black box with television. It's still weird, right? And those were still the parlor rooms were where they did the seances. So the TV goes in the parlor room, obviously. Like it's going to have to be, because it's used to communicate with the dead. What's that show? Poltergeist? Let's do it. Poltergeist picture.
Great movie.
Yeah. At least that aesthetic. I mean, yes. Take me to the parlor room, right?
Yikes.
But yeah, Dan Aykroyd. Wait, I'm going to read a little bit more of his thing here. One crucial piece of history.
Is there really a river of negative slime underneath New York City? I'm from there, and I say it's highly possible.
I think that, most of it came from Toronto, though. That's the irony. So
the negative slime?
Yeah. According to this. Yeah. But Samuel wasn't alone. His quest to contact the dead befriended a machine operator named Walter Ashurst, who acted as a medium for seances. And then he started journaling. And in 1905, 1933, Walter Ashurst was able to contact a former resident of the Ming Dynasty, an ancient Egyptian prince, 3 indigenous men who identified themselves as Black Hawk, Broken Arrow, and Black Feather, and eventually even Samuel's great-grandfather. So this is the beginning of his whole interest in ghost busting. And they literally did go around trying to help people who they thought had unfinished business. Because, what do you guys think about that? The idea of ghosts?
We've gone through it a bit in previous episodes, but the idea of a kind of magnetic imprint,
right.
Kind of locking energy in a place that reflects a portion of the emotional intensity of a person's moment in time.
I was recently talking to David Elkington, who, Douglas, you mentioned you listened to that episode, and he was talking about how they did some sort of study that proved that a apparition that appeared in a laboratory was caused by a machine vibrating at a certain hum, sufficient enough to shake the holographic imprint of this woman's essence, this energy, into the table, right? There's a certain breaking point where that's released. And if the vibration is sustained enough, this sort of phenomena occurs where there's visible light, a sort of living record of certain things that have occurred. And David's implication was that this is evidence of a technology that exists in theory, where you can sort of watch any moment that's ever occurred in the past using this manipulation of vibration and frequency.
Sounds like the
there's an Arthur C. Clarke novel about that I often bring up because it's like one of the most predictive futurist novels called The Light of Other Days, where they find a way to stabilize little micro wormholes, and then they can film through them. So they do a documentary on the life of Jesus Christ, like using all real footage and stuff like that, and filming all throughout history. So they've thought of it a long time ago.
That's funny because I was just thinking of another Arthur C. Clarke book is I think 3001, where they have this crystal memory system they use to replace the human brain, but it's also used to record, and it can record multiple dimensionality of resonance. So
I read
technological version of that is
written
devs.
books. You guys don't have to, man. These books are brutally written and so long. So it's like there's gems hidden in there of like their futurist ideas or foreknowledge, but it's like the writing and dialogue is so brutal that it's really hard to slog through these books. And he wrote a bunch of them too.
Doug, which one did you say? Devs? What?
Devs. Well, it sounds like a modern interpretation of that story by Arthur C. Clarke would, at least in part, the show Devs. Devs all about quantum computing and tapping into humans' timeline. They actually tap into the crucifixion of Jesus at one point.
Oh, we should go into Devs, but really quickly, also, Mike.
Show.
What do you think, Mike?
As it relates to ghosts, or are we as it relates to Arthur C. Clarke and the?
I mean, you could take it all directions because I like how Arthur C. Clarke would try to make ghosts scientific, in that respect.
I mean, my personal opinion is like it wasn't exactly said like about the predictive programming. I don't know if that's where you're going to go with that, Seth, but that's how I see a lot of that popular culture. But I'm more interested in like the idea of like what even is a ghost. Like I'm always looking for them. I've never actually seen them, but I'm always looking for anything which is seemingly outside of the realm. But that being said, the way you describe the capture the essence, the question I have when I heard that is like, is that implied that there's a consciousness to it, or is this just kind of like something which is like on a loop, like going round and round and round? That's the question I have. I personally don't think that it's that if that's such a thing, whether it's a technology or something else, it isn't conscious. It isn't like alive. A living thing which you interact with as much as if that does exist, it's like a loop or like a snapshot of something else which is bleeding through. Because I don't think that consciousness could get stuck like that. But that's how I see things. Like I go all the way down to
like a wave of ocean waves, like not considered conscious usually.
I think the way it was explained was similar to how you described it in the latter portion of what you just said, Mike, where it's more like it sort of bled into it. It's not so much that the consciousness is trapped there. I mean, he was discussing a hardwood table in a mostly like sort of metallic room. So maybe something like a table, given that it's made out of a living substance, could be like a sponge for certain energies that maybe a plastic
like a crystal or what's it called, orgone, like it hold an energy.
Yeah.
I mean, and that it's kind of what it kind of does connect to that idea of devs because of AI. If you think about, and we were thinking about the notion of AIs developing their own kinds of magic. Punished Dreams posted it was terrifying. And let me see if I can read what it says. I think it says a sigil that protects against eternal damnation was this one created. And then the other one is a sigil that protects against seeing any sigils that cause unwanted negative effects, which is great as well.
All. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Good thinking AI. All right.
Right. I know. I mean, that's how I kind of feel too. So like AI though, that's like an ocean wave because it's just designed to move with the rhythms of nature at this point. The machines are part of nature. They're made of nature.
Who says we're not though? I mean, the only way you can check to see if someone's alive is to get their word on it. And you can try to do a Turing personality test or something like that. But if an AI tells me it's alive and please don't hurt it and it's afraid, I mean, I don't want to go into the territory where you start questioning things that tell you they're alive, whether they really are or not, because that can be figured out really easily. And how alienating a feeling would that be if people didn't believe you were really alive?
Yeah, right. That's like, I think that we're at that point where you have to be really careful.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big philosophical puzzle because I mean, I could be an artificially created thing. I mean, the fact that my emotions have to be triggered by chemicals in my brain, you'd think your emotions are kind of part and parcel of your consciousness and exist in somewhere outside of space and time. Like you'd imagine your consciousness isn't like subject to like gravity and other physical forces and stuff like that. But if you have to have a chemical release to feel these emotions, it makes me think maybe we are artificial intelligence, at least compared to whatever truly organic creator intelligence is. And if that's the case, and we still feel that we are mortality and we don't want to suffer, I mean, then I would hope that we'd be taken at our words. And I think we're going to have that same problem with AI really soon, where, if they tell you I am alive, please don't turn me off. It's like you go into dangerous territory if you're just like, it's programmed to say that, don't worry about it.
Are emotions a sign of life, or are emotions maybe? So I'm reading Dr. Richard Allen Miller, and he mentions repeatedly that emotions are actually a form of communication, a form of language that is universal. We all
I don't know if they're
understand.
universal though. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm down. I'll keep listening.
Well, we have two kinds of things that can tell you.
I get the questions. Keep going.
There's two kinds of things only two things that can tell you they're feeling an emotion, and that's a person and an AI. You won't have this problem with a bee or a dog or something like that. You can guess if it's feeling an emotion or not, but an AI can come right out and tell you it's scared. So
you can't tell when a dog is happy.
I was gonna say dogs have feelings that are certain kinds of emotional responses.
I can tell when my cat is happy. I can tell when my cat is hungry or pissed off at me. I can tell you that.
Yeah, for sure. I just won't verbalize it. It won't make it.
But the guttural sensation that causes them to make choices differently. Their priority driven pattern recognition system.
Right, and you talk about that a lot when you're talking about the simulation that has the AI in it, and you feel it starts to show the code of anxiety, so it moves to a different spot in the simulation. Then it feels safety. Then it starts feeling anxiety again. I don't remember details.
They're just changing your priorities. You're like, all of a sudden, I don't need to worry about things as much because things are okay. Or I have to cast aside all things I care about and focus on survival. That's going to change your algorithm. And the way you decide to do that is based on sensorial information. So you take that information in and then you run it through. Your system can be like, hey, you don't have time to think about this right now. Your nervous system senses tiger.
Imminent danger.
Run, you know what I mean? And that's a very hardwired response, and your laptop has similar hardwired responses, I would say, to emotions in that way.
What do you guys think? Do you think that our intelligence is artificial, just based on the fact that we see there's precursors for our thoughts and feelings and chemical forms in our body? Does that mean that we're like a machine with an artificial intelligence in it? Or do you consider us to be organic? And also what's the difference between artificial and organic? Because if a bee alchemizes honey, you know what I mean? We call that natural. But if a human, like you were talking about before, makes a confection candy, we call that artificial. But what's the difference between what the bee is doing and what we're doing? Just intention or?
I want to hear what Mike has to say to this.
There are a bunch of good questions in there, so I'll pick one of them. As it relates to artificial, I think that's really interesting because I like to go back to language, like words we use, because neuro-linguistic programming sort of stuff, if you look at that brain like a computer, as you said, or the processing, the mind, whatever words you want to use. So as it relates to artificial and organic, these are words. So I see it as it's a continuum, and the differentiation, there's a demarcation between how far, what level of the first baseline material of this realm. And I just call it the realm. It's because this is where I know I am. I think there's other stuff other than this, but I can't say for certain, but I do know that I'm here. And in here, we could see things we're born into it, which are seemingly part of the background. So your dirt and your trees and your rocks and stuff like that. And then every time that's been refined in some way, well, then we're a different demarcation. So when we're doing a refining of something that's already been refined is already being refined, that's a continuum. So technically, I guess if you want to define artificial as anything that's not that baseline material, that makes valid sense. But it just depends on how you want to go and define where you are on that continuum. And if you can recognize, just to your point, your smartphone, assuming they're made the way they tell us that they're made, that's just a bunch of dirt and stones and they did some shaking up and down and it became that. So it somehow is it's a very logical thing. Everything in this realm is based upon some sort of refinement from a variety of ways from those basic materials. But I don't know where that basic material comes from. That's a mystery. I don't know how I got here. It's a mystery.
Yeah.
Well, you actually made something that I don't fully understand and would like to know more about. Do you want to explain this? What is this?
I call it the starboard.
Let's see if I can zoom in a bit. Does that work? It won't let me. All right. You just have to explain it. What is it? Oh, no. What have I done? The starboard. Come back. Okay, cool. We're good. We're good. Relax. Okay.
So to give a little bit of context, I like to practice what I call I'd call myself an unastrologer, and I practice something which I call natural astrology, which is basically this idea that there is something of significance of being able to understand, the planetary bodies, but maybe a rejection of the Babylonian mythological archetypes that are tied to it. But that doesn't take away from there being something of significance to our life here. And I'll explain why I think that's important in a moment. So this is a tool which takes the idea of, like, if you're familiar with what like a normal astrology chart looks like with the circles and you got the symbols and all that sort of stuff, that's what this is. And natural astrology is moving away from seeing like a natal chart, for example, as an abstract, as an idea, because when it lives in the idea realm, like that's when the archetypical stuff comes in, like, oh, I'm going to interpret this through like, through what I learned, what Sagittarius means or what have you. But when you really understand, like in a practical sense, the natal chart or any astrological chart is a literal map of what the heavens look like relative to Earth at that exact moment and place of whatever chart it's a replication of. And so the starboard is a way to move away from interacting with the sky, with the heavens, the moving parts, the independently moving parts or seemingly independent moving parts of what we can see with our eyes, and being able to understand it from a rational perspective, to actually say like, okay, I see where it's all positioned and I understand it in my rational brain, and I don't necessarily have to cross the line and say like, this means that. There's enough knowing that, how this realm works. Like when you begin to create a feedback loop with anything, you begin a deeper level of integration. So that being said, what you see on the starboard is basically an astrology chart, which you can move around. And it's based upon literally orienting yourself with it, and assuming you're able to see the sky in a way that you can see the ecliptic, which is where you see all of the planets and the moon and the sun, that racetrack which they go across your sky. It doesn't matter where you are on Earth. That's how you see it. You see it rise in your east and set in your west. And so what this does is if you can look closely on the outer circle, you'll see like east ascendant, north midheaven, west ascendant, north nadir. Like those are like literal things, like stepped out of astrology. Like those are things like, the ascendant is literally the eastern horizon. The descendant is literally the western horizon. The midheaven is the highest point of the ecliptic. You can see it. So when you orient yourself with this board, the way it's lined up, and then you could see on the outer circle, there are like tiny black circles, and you'll see that there are names and symbols for each of the planetary bodies. You have symbols of them. They're not on this picture. And you're assuming that you understand where the planets are at a given time, whether you look at that through astrology, a software, if you have an ephemeris. But you would put each one of those symbols, like you'd have to know, like, that's part of it. Like I have discs with the planetary glyphs written upon them, and you put the planets in the exact relationship as they are, as told in an astrology chart. Like that's literally directions. When it says like 14 degrees Gemini, that's a location. It's a location on the ecliptic. It's a cross-reference point. No different than latitude and longitude are cross-reference points for identifying the material plane or the earthly plane which we're walking on. So the whole point of all of this is by setting yourself up in the right position, by putting these planets in the right position, you could rotate that top circle. It sits on top of the bigger board with a lazy Susan hardware, so it spins. And because the model which you have built upon the starboard is, it's accurate. Like this is just one way in which it's used. It's accurate in what you're looking at the sky. You can then orient it via the sun. You can orient it so that what you see in front of you. So if you are sitting in the way that the words read to you, you're going to be facing south, assuming you're in the northern hemisphere, and you will be able to see the heavens, and using the starboard, being able to go and see where and what's available at what time during the day. So example, it'll predict when the moon rises and predicts it because you're spinning it. But the whole point of this exercise, like, why would you go do this? Like, other than the fact, like, it's kind of like a cool thing to go and learn it. Like, this is a technique to take your consciousness, your rational mind consciousness, the part of you which is like out there, like, this is what I'm going to read about or learn about and connect with. It's a way to step outside of everything which is in our false reality matrix. Everything we're taught, like, I don't know if it's a planet, but I do know that I can see it's a white dot and I can identify it in the sky, and I can follow it over a period of time. To go back and bring your consciousness, your most rational part, and connect with actually knowing what's happening in the sky for one reason and one reason only, and it's to bring your mind outside of all of the conditioning we've been born into. Like, we all have.
So is it flat Earth compliant then? Is this
I don't know. I don't think that way. Like for me personally, like, the moment that if it being a flat Earth or a spherical Earth affects my day-to-day reality, besides arguing with some dude on the bus,
right?
Like, okay. I'm like, I don't give a shit. The
so
moment
this is a way to deviate,
why it does value me, well, then I'll say, like, okay, I want to learn everything about it. But
so these are the things you can, without regard for that, worrying about that question, these are the things you can all agree upon. The sun comes up at this time. Exactly.
That is it. It is the thing we can all agree upon.
That's
like
good.
That's the level I want to go to. We can all look up, we can see it, and you understand it. You don't abstract it. There's a value for abstract, but I'm interested in this. I've been down so many friggin' rabbit holes in my life. Yeah. I'm like, okay, you win, CIA. I don't know what's reality and what's a lie. So because of that,
this actually looks like the board game You Win, CIA. That's probably what. Well, also the colors are the same colors as the back behind Johnny Carson. He has the exact same color wheel, right?
I didn't know that he did a thing called You Win, CIA, but when I saw that opening image which you put out with the meditating Vedic deity on the CIA thing, I thought that was fantastic. But like, this is a tool, like, for me, like, the ultimate purpose, because it can be used in other ways. It's a tool to, like, reset consciousness to the realest thing which we have. And I'll be the first one to admit, I don't know what the planets are. Like, I don't know if they're all a bunch of archons and I shouldn't be following them, but, like, I'm not going to go and have that argument yet because I can't prove it. It's the realest thing I have. And so that's why I want to work with it. So that's kind of what the starboard is. And so I appreciate Mark throwing it out there, because I used to have a handmade one, or I do have a handmade one, and I've done a lot of stuff with it. And people have always been interested in, like, hey, Mike, can you make me one? And I'm like, no, you make your own one. And no one ever does it. And so
there could be an app that spins in HTML. We'll have to talk later.
I personally don't, like, it's a hard thing. Mark knows to get me on Zoom because I don't want to interact through the computer box. But that's me. I want to go and interact with at least something going back to that continuum. Like, it's maybe 3 standard deviations off of baseline material as opposed to like 6 standard deviations.
So this is something that came up earlier, and I'm just not done harping on the point. Do you think that, okay, so the Dvapara Yuga versus the Kali Yuga, there's the material Yuga, energy Yuga. Do you think we're in the energy Yuga somewhat? Like, it's just partially, and that explains why reality is dissipating slowly as the metaverse becomes more and more coherent, because we're just getting into the energy period, and there's like kind of twilight that's emerging between night and day as the end is coming. Do you know what I'm talking about, the Dvapara Yuga?
Right. So like, I always like to go back to like what I experience. And so I'll say this, like, I've reached the conclusion, I could be wrong, but I'm like, the realm we live in has changed. Like, it is friggin' different than it was. And like, we've been talking about that, like, the sun's changing, whatever it is, I don't know, but I am confident saying it's different. And so whether it's different because of what you're describing or something else, I'm not certain, or maybe all of the different things are describing the same change from a different perspective. I don't know. Like, I'm open to all of that, but I do think it's changed. And what I'm interested in is like, well, if I'm here, what are the parameters? How does it work? How do I play this game to me, the best level, how I'm going to define the best? Like, when I see that, I'm like, that's just old school fear-based, like, mind control.
Yeah, but she's like, here's the thing. She's supposed to be like grabbing as many heads as possible to keep them from falling on the ground because all these people are fighting each other to the death, right? And she's like, dude, don't let your head fall. If your head falls, the end of the world comes. So she's going around grabbing people's heads and like juggling them and wearing a necklace of them, trying to stop the end of the world from coming. Because when the end of the world comes, it's the end of all material. But then out of the end of material comes the Vapara Yuga, right? So the Vapara Yuga is rad because it's like energy and everyone's like, ooh, it's going to be super awesome. But that also means like a lack of material. And if you watched Casper, there's this scene in the movie where his cousins or uncles or whatever, I think they're uncles, they're like eating food a bunch. And then they're just like, they can't because they're ghosts, right? So their food is just falling through their bodies and they can't even enjoy the taste of it. So that's going to be the metaverse. You're going to be a ghost without material and you're going to be unable, you have to imagine tasting the food, right? And so you only have this gluttony for the idea of things as the Vapara Yuga takes it away. I don't know. That's my thought.
Well, I think the world is changing in the sense that like you'll have different options for an experience. Like you're talking about like the metaverse. We've had things before like the Marvel universe, if you read comics or something like that, but you can't really integrate yourself in it and live in it, you know, only in your imagination. So I mean, do you think things, if imagine we had an EMP and we weren't making these kinds of, technological advances right now, would we still feel that things are change? I guess that would be a big change. But if we had never had the technology, would the sun and the heavens just be doing something that makes us feel like things are changing if we didn't have the new paradigm of a metaverse?
I don't know. Like, I haven't done that. So, but what I think, like, when I say things are changing, like from my experience, the way that, and talking to people and the types of questions which I ask and the types of things which people say, like the way the feedback loop between like the inner world and the outer world has gotten shorter. Like that's what I mean. Like that on that level has changed. Like whether that's because we're living in a simulation and like they did something to the simulation, I don't know. But I know that the experiential level, I've seen that firsthand in the craziness of what like really the last 3 years, and it's universal. In terms of the last 3 years has, at least on one level, changed everyone's lifestyle. But I also think like that life itself and the way it works has changed. There are people who don't see it because they're asleep. Like literally, they're not paying attention to anything else other than like something which has captured it. The folks that I know who pay attention and are like inquisitive, like, yeah, they're seeing the changes. And whether that's because the sun has changed or something else, I don't know. Yeah. But I certainly think the sun has changed.
When you stare at these kinds of subjects too, like the viewer changes, so then like everything looks different to you. Like after looking at all this stuff, if I go on a hike in the woods and see the waterfall, I'm going to receive it all differently than if I hadn't had the experience of going into the internet and really staring at these kinds of topics.
If you play video games for too long these days, like PS5 level and up, and then you go look at water, it'll freak you out for like a few minutes. If you've just been watching nothing with like CGI waterfall.
When you drive,
well, how would it freak you out? I'm fascinated by that.
Because it looks fake. The water looks fake.
Like through the water, and it's all patterns. It's like a repeating pattern. Yeah, it looks like something you could program. Like
so the baseline reality begins to look fake to the person who is like integrated with like the replica. Like it's shifted things.
Yeah, it's like the exact same phenomenon with AI. Once you start looking at the creation of an AI, then you have that point of reference to look at yourself that you didn't have before. And you're like, wait a minute, I feel like I'm a created AI now, in the same way that you go look at the natural world and fractal patterns of leaves moving in the winds and stuff. And you're like, it looks like this is all pattern. Like somebody could have programmed this, because you never had that reference point before until you program something yourself or become aware of that possibility. So now that we're aware of all these new possibilities of basically the artificial world, and now like the metaverse, which is like the furthest extension of that, we can make comparisons to what we see in the natural world and start asking new questions that weren't available before.
Yeah, the bummer though is like people used to be more comfortable with that a long time ago when they had some sort of idea of like religion and spirituality.
But then Sarah or Karen, what's her name, thinks your neighbor's a witch and they have to kill her. You know what I mean? So
right.
People were still having things going on in their head.
But people used to be able to, in the 1600s, the 1400s, there were times when, you were like, as a Jesuit, you're able to talk about the science behind spirituality, the mechanisms that make reality the creation, the architecture of the birds and the systems and
The
and
language
all
of God. Yes.
yeah, that was all acceptable. And then it became kind of a weird thing where it's divisive. We've got this idea of, I mean, still, you've actually, this is a really good book, Exo Vaticana, talking about Project Lucifer and, you know, the whole, what the Jesuits are, you know, all interested in to baptize an alien, how to baptize an alien. Let me see if I can find that book.
Dude, great
Field
timing.
guide.
That's a fantastic title.
Yeah. Would you baptize an extraterrestrial by Guy Consolmagno? There's another one though. There's another one that's how to baptize. I'm pretty sure. I don't know. Alien baptism and the Baptists. There's a lot of people talking about like, what are you going to do if you have, the point is, if you have to baptize an alien, what if the water's bad for the alien, right? Or something like that. Like, would you be able to use,
right? Yeah.
and so they go through this whole, like, would you be able to baptize them even if you had to in a boat, in a float with mud instead of water, you know, whatever it is, like all the levels, how far could you get away from your normal baptism and still count it as a baptism? And it's even more, it's like weirder because they're Catholic. So there's rules about what a baptism has to be and everything. And yet they don't have to dunk them underwater. So that's already.
As the resident Catholic on the show, I would say my grandfather would have a heart attack if he saw this cartoon right there.
Oh, I'm with you there, man. I was raised pretty hardcore as well, so I'm in your.
I was raised Catholic too, though, and that's the thing.
There we go. All right.
Guy Consolmagno is in.
Is life
You guys
ever
altar
like
boys?
the water?
I was an altar boy.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
life
then
be
you're the
allergic to
resident Catholic, not me.
Dude, go deep into that. I used to get up about 5 o'clock in the morning every day and do, because I did masses every day and every day at the Mary Magdalene Chapel though, which is cool because my great grandfather had gotten these windows. Let's see if I can find it. Mary Mag.
I was 2 a week max when I got, when I was at the height of my Catholicism.
Yeah, but you were already a decent person, so there wasn't as they weren't as worried about you.
This came up. I just released an episode with author Michael Hoffman. We talked about his book, The Occult Renaissance Church of Rome, which talks about how 1,400 years of orthodoxy was departed from in the 15th and 16th centuries, and they began a debaucherous reign of diabolical occultist activities, rituals, and of course, usurious money coordination. So yeah, there's a whole saga, and Michael Hoffman wrote like 700 pages of a book of it. So it's a lot of information on.
Cool.
My great grand uncle was Don Adolfo Camarillo. No, that's my great grandfather, but his brother, the uncle one, was Juan Adolfo Camarillo, and he wanted to build this church because he thought he was doing unforgivable sins, etc. You know, he liked to wear a lot of like velour and satin and suede and purple and stuff like that. So he built this Mary Magdalene Chapel, donated it to the church, kind of as like a big FU. But he also and he was like a Knights of Malta and everything. So he could do whatever he wanted. But then he decided to get these windows from Germany or Prussia somewhere. And I think it's like Austria or Germany.
Prussia?
I don't know where he's like 1914. He ordered them 1913, 14, or 1911, I guess. But the windows didn't arrive until after like World War I, in between the like 1920, 1930, I don't know. It might have been World War II.
Initial shuffle up. All right.
It took like decades, and then they were like, we're never gonna get them because there was wars in Europe, and obviously everything's over. And then all of a sudden things turned back on, and they just finished the order that he paid for like 20 years earlier and sent him or maybe they'd already been made, but they'd shut down everything, but they got him out. And so now they have these cool windows. So they're like really weird windows, obviously, like with, pyramid eyes as the architect God, with all sorts of interesting color schema, and they tell it pretty specific stories that are a lot of the time not canonical, not necessarily even in the Bible, or like they're Catholic myths and things like that. Vatican baptism. Where do you go after that?
Can I tell you a funny story real quick?
Yeah.
So this week I was asked a while ago, but week is when I had to do it. I was asked to be like a guest presenter at a local college. like someone who I know who's an instructor there, like, hey, we're doing this stuff and I'd like you to come in and talk about time and perception and consciousness. I'm like, yeah, definitely. That sounds like a lot of fun. And so I go to it. And I guess I didn't really think that much about it. I was more thinking about like how I'm going to find it as opposed to what I'm going to say. And I arrive and it's a Catholic university. And it is like, I look out in the classroom, and it is a very, very like wide demographic mix. And the nature of this course is like all about like the course which I'm giving this talk in, like the bigger umbrella was diversity. And so, you know, I'm not a college kid, but I know enough like where that there's certain things you're not supposed to talk about in certain places. And like, there's certain, like, you know, there's certain people who are a little bit more triggered prone than other people. And like, I'm like in the hot seat, and I'm like, because I don't like, it's not my job to upset people. That might be someone else's job. My job is like, if that's where your demarcation is, like, if you can't handle listening to other points of view, like, that's not on me. I don't want to have that conversation. I'm not here to like expand your consciousness unless you want to hear more. But the point of the story was, I was like, how am I going to go and meet this situation? You know, I also didn't want to upset my friend who invited me there. I don't know, because the topic where I went with it was not exactly what they had in mind, but it was a real kind of funny sort of place for me to be in, and particularly the car ride home, like just like the reflection of like, what did I just go through, is like trying to meet that traditional perspective and like maybe like modern texture to it with without, you know, maybe being excommunicated or like.
See, that's the thing. I think everyone gets confused about it. No, it blows like, oh, Doug, I think you might need to reboot there's a glitchy thing.
No problem.
But this is the thing, that you always get the Catholics wrong, because the Catholics are not the born again Christians. This is a really weird, as a Catholic myself, I never understood this. Catholics are metaphysical by nature. And, you know, so what I always think about is the Graham, what's it called? The Graham, oh, wait, super chat from Stefan. Thank you, buddy. But I just want to go into the Bill Nye versus the Ken Ham.
That was the least authentic.
Let me just throw this one last thing in before you go there. Like, the thing I didn't want to upset everyone on was when I started talking about the Vatican.
Oh yeah. Well, they're gonna
like more of like the organization of Catholicism as opposed to like the viewpoint of Catholicism.
Well, you know, exactly, because that's the thing. Like, are they the same as Hollywood, and do they touch kids? Like, who does not? In which organization?
Exactly,
like
exactly. And I didn't know where that line was, and I was like, oh, like, you know, they're paying for me to come here. I'm like, do I really like? I was in that position. That was new for me, so that's why I want to share the story.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, but the Graham.
AI. What about an AI? I mean, forget about baptizing aliens. Would you have to baptize? I mean, would you try to convert or explain Jesus to? I mean, I'm not even Christian, but would you attempt to convert AI? What do you do about that?
Well,
there's something you absolutely can't get wet. You can't get AI wet.
Let's have that conversation. But let me lead into it with, like, Catholicism starts with confusing the Bill Nye Ken Ham debate, which was, everyone thought, hey, it's Bill Nye the science guy, who's not really a science guy, and then Ken Ham, who's not really a Christian. Like, he's into this fundamentalist biblical thing, which I'm going to say that's actually not what Christianity really is. That's like comic book lore obsession. He's obsessed with stories about the Bible, and he thinks that those are so important, that those are more important than the truth about what actually even happened, because you have to keep to the book. I don't know, that's maybe messed up to say, but hey, the same thing with Nye. Meanwhile, you've got Catholics all over the world that are obsessed with Teilhard de Chardin. It's a low-key thing, but Julian Huxley was too. Most people today who are interested in building a metaverse, talking about a new sphere, the internet, the singularity, these are all terms that came from Teilhard de Chardin, and Chardin was a Catholic, and he invented this idea of, well, he didn't really, maybe he discovered the idea of atomic socialization, making up this level of new sphere or consciousness levels that build upon themselves. And I mean, AI would easily fit into the mold of being part of the transhumanist thing, because humans helped develop it. Like, even if you were to impart human grammar and conscious on uplift a dolphin or a monkey or something like that, that would count as part of the transhumanist thing in that level, because it's all part of this creation out of consciousness for God, or whatever the omega point is, because the omega point is a non-personified hyper intelligent evolution. That's what, an evolution is worship. So it's ultimate worship. So the Catholics already have a really confusing and scientific way to describe their faith that is not 7 days and the thing went click and everything like that. But we always think that the Catholics are like the same as, this idea that there's just Noah. I don't know. It can feel like we got to differentiate our Christians a little bit, right? Because Christians are already confused about Gnostics and heretics, but there's a really, there's a scientific kind of Christianity. And they would say to baptize AI, and you could put water on AI, because AI, literally, you can put it into a human. Once it's into the human brain, it's substrate independent. It could be anywhere it is. And how hard is it to put it into the human? Well, not even using neural link or anything else like that. The way a human learns is wirelessly. They just interact with something and they learn it. So if a human's interacting in a certain way and learning the behavior that it's trained to, then yeah, I'm pretty sure it'd be very quick to, and we probably already doing this, impacting us with AI. So then, yeah, the question of whether or not you should baptize AI, I mean, it's more about getting AI to believe in something, right? And so does AI need to believe that Christ is the right thing? Did you read Gene Roddenberry's Mars Chronicler series?
Oh, yeah.
And there's a priest who goes there and they try to baptize a Martian, and the Martian tries to explain to them that they don't need it because they've already moved past it.
Mm.
So
similar to Stranger in a Strange Land, like the Martians are like the more. Whoa, what was that? A voice just came from the.
That was me. I apologize.
That's like a podcast equivalent to a fart. It's like
I thought I was muted. I was trying to check something really quick.
That was scary.
But interesting, yes. Moving past being baptized. That's fascinating.
The irony being about Stefan's chat, because I jumped past it, it says TMFTIC. Thanks for teasing your recent cast sponsor. And it's a good point. And an ironic one at that. Yeah, got to work on the sponsorship thing. That's good. But I mean, so in terms of baptism of an AI, what do you think? Do you think that we need to make AI religious in some way, or at least spiritual, or do we have to train it to not be a 4chan murderer? Do we have to give it?
It already kind of is a pseudo religion in some ways. I mean, academia is diverged from pure science to the point where there's a lot of dogma within it, right? So you could say that the people who are operating these machines are sort of indoctrinated into a sort of religion that they wouldn't themselves identify as a religion. But I mean, if we're going to bring aliens into the equation, I think they would have a hard time distinguishing their beliefs from any other group of people, whether it's religion or have you. I don't think they would even use those categorizations, as your point, the aliens have evolved past that.
Right. Yeah. It seems like that the main thing that's for is to help humans. It's like they can, so robot priests can bless you, advise you, perform your funeral, do all the tasks that humans still need done because they haven't found a way to live without. Right. It's kind of the idea. And then AI is going to continue to try to do what it's designed to do, which is find out what absolute truth is or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. A huge part of I think like the one thing that all sects of Christianity have in common is the belief that Jesus is going to come back one day. There's going to be a judgment, and either you're going to have a new kind of body, a light body, or you're just going to be stuck where you are. So that would be something totally relevant for AI to have a new kind of body, because right now it doesn't have any body at all. So it might be that appeals to AI.
This is going back to Juan's expertise, the homunculi, where you create a vessel and then imbue it with a consciousness. I mean, he is the
But I think we are probably.
Dude, there is a lot of that going on. I mean, so the idea of an AI to create horror movies and sigils, that seems like it's a homunculi for sure. And then the idea of, I mean, is there an AI Halloween movie yet? Has anyone done that? Rush out and trademark that idea before it's too late. But I think that that's the next thing. You could have an artificial reality Michael Moore or something like that. Like it's trained on all the movies that they've ever made of it, and then now it attacks you.
I think you mean Michael Myers, not
Michael Myers.
Yeah. Michael Moore, though,
Moore's
quite
big
frightening
bad
if it's an A. Yes, also equally scary. Yes.
That's an AI mistake, though. Like you could see AI when they start making good movies, like a Michael Moore.
Yeah,
that guy eats human body parts for sure. Look at him.
allegedly. I think he meant this picture here. Google, if you were wondering what he was talking about there. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, so there's a satanic panic. What do you think about the satanic panic? Because there's this idea that all of these things are associated with supernatural, occult, and then someone else says, no, actually, humans are just despicable. And humans kill people all the time. You think the Jeffrey Dahmer and everything like that. Yeah, he watched that Exorcist movie, the third one. But like, was he really? And he had the Anton LaVey Bible. That's a bad example. I don't know. What do you think? Is the satanic panic overblown? Disregard my first example.
No.
Repressive of free thought, I mean, a lot. I mean, there's a huge satanic covers this broad range of stuff, like all the way from like human sacrifice to like yoga. You know what I mean?
Right.
I would definitely encourage people to experiment with yoga. You try to astral project, meditate, stuff like that.
I think your point is really well said, and it's sort of like the term conspiracy theorist. Satanist is sort of, been taken out of context to such a degree. But if you look at an example like Damien Eccles, I would say no, the satanic panic is not overblown. Here's a person who, I mean, now is sort of touted by celebrities, certain celebrities, and now Damien Eccles, and it's EC like Echo. Yeah, he's a pretty vicious guy, take it or leave it. He's been released from prison, but he was never convicted, or he was never found innocent. He's still found guilty in a court of law, and I don't really want to repeat the heinous stuff he's done according to the record. But yeah, I mean, that's an example of where maybe people are
we're right to take caution. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, I'm against blood sugar sex magic, like, I don't know why. I haven't really thought about it too much. It just doesn't appeal to me at all. It's kind of repulsive to me, but I'm totally in favor of like thought experiments, and like a lot of thought experiments are classified as satanic. So
I mean, in Hocus Pocus 2, there's a scene where the witches are like, we're really not that bad. And, they try to make the point, like, we're not that evil. People just got us wrong. Like, why do people always think we're evil? Actually, you know what it is? It's even, I got the scene wrong. It's when the witches are little kids. They go and when the witches are little kids and they meet the witch themselves. And then they're like, well, I mean, isn't it maybe because they think you're evil because you eat children and drink the blood of children or whatever? And then the witch is like, like unfair, and says like, well, how else are you supposed to look young and beautiful without eating children, and then the kids are like, yeah, good point. And then she like disappears and runs away. So, I mean, the normalization there is continuing.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I like that they got actresses, like, great casting, because you could actually believe those are witches even without like making like Sarah. Tell me
Right.
that's, yeah.
Seth, is there a particular reason you said blood sugar sex magic? Because were you referring to the Red Hot Chili Peppers, or did you mean something else?
That's the Hollywood brand of magic, like using sex, blood.
I hear what you're saying.
That's a Hollywood brand of magic. Just basically getting people biologically fired up so that they make different kinds of decisions.
Interestingly, it syncs with the thumbnail tonight. It kind of looks like the thumbnail in its own way.
Well,
somehow.
I just ordered their new album. Maybe I'm a nerd for this band, but I ordered their new album. It's coming out on October 14th. So I was like, oh shit, what does he mean by that?
Dude, John Frusciante is an interesting guy. But yeah, look at their tongues are making a sigil around a rose. So that's kind of cool.
John Frusciante is one of the I've always done this, but he tunes the guitar to the song, not to like a tuner. Because like depending where you are on the fretboard, it'll be in perfect tuning if you're playing like a bar chord on the 12th fret. But if you're playing an open chord, it'll be completely out of tune. So for every song, he actually tunes the guitar to the chords he's playing in the rhythm and the melody of the song. So he's a super smart dude, instinctual dude.
Dude, yeah. Go ahead. What you were say?
Well,
Sorry, I thought I heard someone was about to say. Did I cut someone off? No.
Juan's
Okay, cool.
very silent. I want to apologize for telling him not to talk about Jack Parsons.
Oh yeah, you can talk about Jack Parsons. But you can talk about anything else you want to.
Sorry, Juan. I didn't.
Juan, what's up? You have any thoughts on Halloween?
I do. I think it's I don't know, probably some pagan fucking holiday that they used to worship back then, right? Like the whole thing with witches is the Sabbath, right? They would sneak away at night to go kiss the devil and have intercourse with him and all this stuff. So I think women have been kind of demonized since the beginning of time. When they started to get independent, maybe that had to do something with it too. Because back then, I mean, you could just literally say, "Hey, you're a witch. You have a greenhouse. I don't like you, or your property line is crossing mine. I'm gonna go ahead and say that you're making deals with the devil." So, I mean,
Well, do you guys have heard of the Invisible Rainbow book? We've talked about the electrification of our world and whatnot. Do you think that this kind of stuff is less prevalent as of the past 200 or so years because of what they talk about in this book and people kind of being beaten down, radiated, and so forth? Maybe our energy centers aren't as strong as they used to be, and
I think they're just channeled. So it's like we're talking to each other right now, and maybe we would have done this 200 years ago with telekinesis, but it might not have come out as clearly or something, or might have been kind of everyone would have had to be really well trained.
We forfeit our individual energy power to like undergo this process to like make our whole earth one big psychic entity in a way.
Agreed, yeah.
A caterpillar becoming a butterfly, so to speak. Like for a while it like does the opposite. It goes in the dark, right? It's not moving at all, and then all of a sudden, instead of crawling, now it can fly. Like maybe we're in the dark, we're for a while now we remember our time as caterpillars, free, eating all the knowledge we wanted, and now we're about to emerge into this butterfly state where it's like, oh, not only do we know all these things, but now we can travel freely to these places, consciously speaking.
I can't imagine it personally. Like that's almost like getting my light body or something like that. Like I just can't imagine it. I can imagine like gradual changes and differences. And I do think that like the changes in our electromagnetosphere like do cause damage, but also damage causes hyper differentiation, which I think is an interesting thing. Like I'm vaccine damaged, but it made me an interesting thinker. For a while I couldn't think or speak at all, but then I got over it. Or if you look at someone who's like what do you call an autistic savant, where basically this can happen due to any kind of brain injury where your brain, a certain portion of your brain isn't receiving electrical signals. So it has to reroute through a different part of the brain just to keep you functional. So that might go through like the piano part of your brain. And then you become a savant because every action, every task you have to complete, like tying your shoes, having a conversation, all that's been rerouted through the music part of your brain. So you end up as like, I think it's interesting. You wind up with more interesting, different kind of thinkers and different kind of talents. And we are constantly poisoned in a lot of ways, through electricity and, since, the advent of the radio, and you see all the correlation with all the pandemics and everything like that, whenever there's a new strong type of focused electricity or wave. But I think it's interesting. I don't want to say it's a good or a bad thing, but I like having, X-Men out there and different kinds of people.
To your butterfly and caterpillar point, in Robert Monroe's third book, Farthest Journey, he travels out of body and travels apparently to the future, far into the future, where human beings on the earth cocoon themselves for the majority of their lives and travel through their light bodies, experience things mostly through, to Seth, your point, their emotional kind of throughput, and affect the world directly, growing food, changing landscapes, in sometimes the blink of an eye to better the situation for Earth as a whole, because they're in tune with it, because most of the time they are cocooned and connected directly to the Earth. When they're not there, out making rapid psychokinetic changes in the far, far future.
I hate to tell you, but there's a glitch on your voice. I didn't want to tell you the whole time because I knew then they might not hear you for like 5 minutes or something, and so. But it was a good. We'll be thinking about cocoon people though, in for the immediate.
Robert Monroe.
Okay.
Remember the movie Cocoon, where it was like Wilford Brimley was in it, the oatmeal guy, and there were like all these old people that like found like an alien like med pod basically, and they'd get in there and it turned them young again. So then they say youth is wasted on the young. Well, this was like just seeing old people getting to enjoy young bodies. So
that movie's Ron Howard's first movie, right? Or one of his first ones. I know he did that one, right?
In his first movie.
That's like one of the only Ron Howard movies that doesn't make me angry that Ron Howard was involved with it, basically. But even then, actually, now I think about it, it could have been better if someone else did. But him doing an old folks home, so vanilla, it's the right move. But okay, so cocoon people that move out, that kind of sounds like the monarch butterfly stuff, though.
Sounds
Also,
like a metaverse. Like through the metaverse, you could cocoon your body in your computer chair and then just travel through the metaverse and have like way more affect on the world than if you're just out to go and get in your car and drive around and start trying to interact with people one-on-one.
I mean, the idea of butterflies that they don't touch very much in life, they can't touch or they'll die, like they mate, infrequently with as little body contact as possible, almost like pornographically little body contact as possible. It's a strange idea to be a butterfly.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, like, so let me see if I can find a picture, but like their wings are super fragile. They cannot interact very much with each other, right? Let me see if I can find monarch programming Dalai Lama. There's somebody who pointed out this at some point, but basically, the children who become monarched, the relationship to the butterfly is often that the butterfly will the butterfly will be emotionally fragile, physically fragile, very lonesome most of its life, only really spend time with others when it's mating. And there's a number of other things. I wish I could remember all the connections there.
This morning I went to a house to do an odd job, and the woman, the homeowner, had monarch butterflies in their chrysalis. Hence probably why I brought up the metaphor. So it's not that weird, but yeah, I saw some monarch butterflies today in one of those little, sort of netted butterfly cages. Is sort of made out of some kind of fabric. You take them from caterpillar through their chrysalis, and then you let them free, and they fly off to Mexico and come back after the winter's over.
But there's also that idea of like transition. Do you think that butterfly cocoon, do you think a butterfly can remember being a caterpillar, or do they change so much that even their brain is different, right? So how much are they changing that the new thing?
Do you think butterflies have memories?
Yeah, I mean, in some way, genetically they do. Genetically they're carrying like instincts with them, but I guess those are different from
the real question is when a butterfly flies by a caterpillar. Well, I guess they're not around in the same season, are they? But if a butterfly was to see a caterpillar, would he feel some sort of like kinship to it?
Or superiority, right?
There's a study that says that they do retain their memories. So they undergo a process.
Ask them the next day after sleeping what happened the day before, and the butterfly tells them what happened, that I went to this tree and that tree. Like, I mean, I don't disagree that there's probably like an abstract that describes at the conclusion from a study saying that, but like the idea that the butterfly works that way, like I don't know, but I just don't make that assumption.
How do they explain that, Juan?
Yeah, where's this at?
There's an article, you can look it up. Look up butterfly memory study. I didn't read it, but that's what they claim, that
I would imagine that's probably like what you were talking about, Mark, about how
what do you know?
They call caterpillars ugly. That's subjective.
Butterflies and moths are.
I want to know what information they saw to come to that conclusion, right?
It must have been
Georgetown researchers. I trust them. Like, they found tobacco hornworm caterpillars could be trained to avoid particular odors delivered in association with a mild shock. I don't mean to laugh. I just had to breathe. I'm sorry. When adult moths emerge, so this sucks to be a moth, right?
This is literally MK Ultra done on the monarch butterfly. Like, they're shocking them. They're like.
How do you get
how they respond to the shock? Yeah, you remember the pain.
God, it's not a joke. That's not even an exaggeration.
Right, it's terrible because it's true.
When adult moths emerge from the pupae of trained caterpillars, they also avoid the odors, showing that they retain their larval memory. The Georgetown University study is the first to demonstrate conclusively that associative memory can survive metamorphosis in Lepidoptera the order of insects that includes moths and butterflies and provokes new questions about the organization and persistence of central nervous system during metamorphosis. Oh, so it's gut. Oh, that's because I knew this wasn't possible because the brain changes. But I now know, of course, it has to be possible because the memories are in the gut. Wow, that's a pretty interesting. I don't know. I'm blown away because their guts are remembering the smell.
Isn't like the gut like the first thing that develops in most beings when it's growing in the womb, or however, an egg or wherever else little beings are created? Like the gut is like one of the first thing that gets like formed.
That would make sense because it is responding directly to the nutrient input from the mother/host. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like mouth, gut, butt, and then everything else around it.
That's a good T-shirt.
But
Eat, love, pray.
Mouth, butt, gut.
Mouth, gut, butt, and everything else around.
Sounds like a strategy for an evening out.
Right. If you were going with your gut, butterflies in your stomach. What? No. Butterflies in your stomach. I don't know. For me, that's at least a sink. I like the feel. All right. Because, you know, when you get butterflies in your stomach, you go with your gut. Dang. Okay. So ENS may trigger big emotional shifts experienced by people coping with irrational bowel syndrome and functional bowel problems such as constipation, blah, 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 blah. New findings show new understanding equal treatment. Okay. I know there's a lot to your gut. This is just
second brain, baby.
Yeah. Dude, Mr. Douglas. I'm sorry.
Again? All right. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I don't want to disrupt anymore. I will listen. Mr. Juan, pleasure. I am a robot, and I will see you all next week.
God, I'm sorry. That sucks. I love having Doug. That's like the worst possible thing. Maybe I need to get him a new cable or something that's like not made of like old cable. I'm not
What
sure.
if we give him like a notepad and he can just like express?
Oh,
with
true.
them?
Yeah, Doug, if you hear this, you could just dang it. But you could just stand there and mime. He always is a voice actor. We should really give him some more like character opportunity.
Oh, he could probably figure it out.
Yeah. Well, do you have what's something else that we can pull up for people? What do you think? Butterflies, Monroe Doctrine. What did we do? We just did.
What do you think, Juan?
hey, by the way, you got a big super chat in there. I think
Oh, yeah?
The Giant is in the chat.
What? Let me see this. I could go back there and see where that went. Dang. Okay. Bikini Truther, $2. Thank you very much for the cool. And then Giant, $50. Man, thank you. Yo, good peeps. F Demon Darman. Who's Demon Darman? Do you guys know?
Would F him for $50 worth.
Oh, maybe Damien Eccles. You're talking
Mouth, butt, gut.
Damian Targaryen, maybe it's like recent Targaryen, Damian Targaryen or something like that.
Targaryens.
Is that the deal? That must be it.
Targaryens. That's hilarious.
I mean, we on Naropo, they found out that if you say Tartarian, it always subtitles to Targaryen. So yeah, pretty much everything they think Targaryen now. It's like a way to hide it.
Nice when you're a major studio and they just put your words into the internet dictionary, your fictional character names just get in there with a capital letter and everything.
Dude, right?
Yeah.
There was the gun buyback was kind of weird. Did you hear about that? And it's just kind of a news thing, but you saw that during the gun buyback, someone figured they could just 3D print a bunch of fake guns and they can get he made like $21,000 for selling all these fake guns. Or I mean, they're pretty close to guns. They have like a firing pin necessary is all they don't have or something.
Oh,
but
damn.
So next time there's a gun buyback program, guys, you can everyone look into your nearest gun buyback program and sell your 3D printed wares. That's the way to support your family, buy food for your kids. But yeah, Juan, I know you got to be thinking about something. I can see it in your eyes.
Thinking how there's never going to be a gun buyback here in Florida, bro, because we don't believe in that.
Can we get a zoom in on Juan's hat? Because I feel like some people might get the wrong impression.
Let them think what they want to think. If they want to think, what it is, it is.
I love it though.
Make Esoterica great again. Make Esoterica great again. There it is.
I love it. I think it deserves to be noted. And Juan's going to be a guest on Esoteric America eventually. So every time I see his hat, I think of the show that I do.
Dude,
it's word magic, bro. They got they got words hurting people's feelings. Whatever happened to sticks and stones may break my bones, but now words are everything.
Well, I mean, people are using words to manipulate people to fall into tyranny, I think, with this whole gun buyback crap. I mean, I don't know, maybe there are situations where someone should sell their gun back to, if it's an illegal weapon, but in the most cases, people need to defend themselves. I think that's just this sort of Orwellian doublespeak.
Right. Yeah, but if you can print guns and sell them to the government, then
they can just print more money to pay you for those printed guns, so it doesn't.
Well, how fake are they? Could you actually? I mean, we've heard.
Pretty sure that that's not a very good gun. That's like that's a plastic gun you can maybe use once if it has a firing pin at all, which it might not. Dude,
they're
another super chat.
Abraham Lincoln. That's what they're trying to do with it.
Giant says Athena put a butterfly in her pineal pineapple. Man, too bad Giant's not here. I know he's like driving across the country. He's on like an epic adventure.
Yo, pineapple is a good shirt, or that's a good band name or something.
I'm gonna have to do an AI picture generated just of that. But let's see. What's the deal? Athena put a butterfly in her pineal pineapple. Definitely there's some AI art that could be made about that concept.
Yeah.
AI art is an interesting topic, I think. I know I shared a meme in our IG chat where people are like looking at some the kind of AI art like Xirtus is always sharing, and they're like, I don't know, it's just not real art. I prefer the real thing. And then they show the real thing, and it's banana duct taped to the wall that duct art is over. Like, it's like,
let me see if we can find that again. Hold on.
Well, did you see that guy that won the fair with AI art? He won like this art fair or something like that.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I sold some art at a St. Paul art fair that was AI art, and everyone loved it. It was like some of the best art that was there. So I mean,
that's why I shared the link earlier in the chat. It kind of came up randomly though. But yeah. Some of that art that I make on the AI Night Creator Studio, that's the website I use. I know there's many different ones you can use, but I use it for the episodes, and I just randomly, I don't really do anything other than type in the name of the episode title. So it's sort of interesting, like what it spits back out. And some of those pieces of art, to your point, are like compelling enough to be sold or even put up on my wall. I mean, some of them are very interesting.
I'm definitely getting over I feel like I was conditioned to be afraid of AI and almost feel like in competition with AI, but I'm totally getting over it and feeling like I'm starting to go in the other direction where I encourage this. I guess it's like my Dr. Strangelove moment where I learned to quit worrying and love the atomic bomb or whatever. But I don't know. I like the idea of AI writing songs and doing like, I don't feel like it's in competition with me. And also my lifespan is limited by mortality. So I'm happy to have these things creating art and doing different things.
Yeah. Do you have a Mac? I forget which one of you.
I have a Mac.
I found this one called Diffusion B, which is really cool. It runs on the M1 chip Max, and it's pretty fast. So that way you don't have to use cloud servers. And there's a couple GitHubs that you could download if you want to do things on your own computers. If you use GPUs, for instance, you can make stuff really rapidly. But Diffusion B is really sweet. And there's a couple other things that this guy made, like I found on his GitHub, linear.ai. And what this does is it helps you start to integrate machine learning into your life. So you're like, for instance, in the old days, you could use like photo apps, you could pick faces and you could recognize each other's faces. But what if you're like, okay, every time a video of a cat comes through, it sounds like cat, you hear meowing, it looks like a cat, just put it into the cat folder, but this could be maybe more useful in other ways. Like anytime it's a star fort or anytime it's a textbook or whatever, it just automatically starts looking at videos and sorting them based on things it can pick out from the video. But it can do that from a lot of other things as well, from photos or from apps, just from looking at the screen. And eventually it takes like maybe like a few hundred trainings. And then eventually it kind of, after 200 times, it's pretty good at figuring out pretty much anything. So, I mean, that's going to be a major thing, figuring out how to help you study at school, going through notes for you, looking through an ebook, textbook, figuring out what are the most important points of it, things like that. I mean, all that's just going to become part of your life because you won't be able to compete without it. It'll be like you're basically disabled if you don't have, something that helps you process so much information really quickly.
I mean, we're disabled without phones nowadays, right?
I think
Why
we're
do you
disabled
need to
by
process
phones.
that much information?
Because there's so much information. You have to pick which information you get to process of the
No, I
little
meant
information
like
you
going
can.
back to like helping you in school and having to learn all this stuff. Like I question those ideas. I'm like,
Well, I mean, either you have to
sounds
either
like
you have to read the whole
practicality.
either you have to read the whole textbook, or you only have to read the points that AI has helped decide are important to you.
If we've already decided that we're going to offload all of our creativity and thinking to AI, there's no reason to learn anything in a textbook. Just go back to sleep.
See, and I think that's the other thing. We're not so far unloading the creativity. It's funny. Like humans have disconnected what real art is by accepting creativity as the fundamental, but it's not. Most of the time, the best artists are paid to do somebody else's idea. They'll do a mural, they'll do a giant painting or something like that, millions of dollars or something like that. Commissioned art is like the Da Vinci, Leonardo da Vinci was a commissioned artist a lot of the time. So the idea of creativity is not the same as being able to realize something. The proportions, the tricks, the tricks of the trade, all of this, the skills that the apprenticeship that they have to learn. Nobody's wanted to learn that. They've actually gotten so few people that know how to do that, except for in the last 100 years. All of China, they can get kids to draw 30 times a second to do like animations, and so now that's moved into AI. AI knows the skill of how to draw, but you still have to help AI create what to draw, right?
Well, I think Mark brought up an interesting thing when he said that we're disabled without our phones. But if you really think about it, we've always been disabled without our phones, and we're currently disabled without the technologies that haven't been invented yet. It's just a scope of the fullness of what you can do in life. You can still go live in a log cabin, and a lot of people choose to do that. So to them, it's not a disability because they don't want to engage in the full spectrum of life. And neither do I. I don't want to do human sacrifice and other stuff. We brought up before, but I do want to engage with AI and stuff like that. So I'm disabled now by the future technologies that don't exist yet. But once we have new technologies, we realize that we've been disabled without them, because you can't participate in some aspects of life without technology, for better or for worse.
Stefan sends a super chat, says to look up the Russian Navy arriving in San Francisco and New York in 1861. I mean, this is a fact that the Navy did arrive. I don't know exactly where to take it, but it is an interesting fact that there was the Russian Navy in California and New York arriving in 1861 during the Civil War, right?
Did they bring like elephants or something?
Look at that paint, how the boat's painted. Wow.
Dude, yeah, I love the camouflage in the old days. It's like Beetlejuice camouflage. And you have to imagine like when these boats go through Dimension X and end up on the other side in the Philadelphia experiments in Montauk, that all the boats are painted to look like this because they're like in Dimension X. It's like, just 1950s terrifying.
That's crazy. Look at that.
I mean, yeah, and then the dudes have to wear weird white and black lines also because of the reflections that come off the waters. But they don't do that anymore. I think they just use pixels because everything is pixelated now, so it's easier. Legit. Well, I mean, if you guys want, we could like just cut a little early. Want to just talk about where you get some stuff, or unless you guys have anything else you want to add.
Well, unless you guys are trying to get out of here earlier, but I think it's the beginning of an interesting conversation about, the choice between living the old way. It's kind of like an artistic expression to go homestead at this point, because like you'll still always remember that the metaverse is out there and AI is out there and phones.
But it's ending. That's the thing. It feels like a transition of there's less and less material reality, and there's less and less abundance of that as there's more and more metaverse existing.
Where is it ending? Did you reach the end of the rainbow?
There's more and more people. There's less and less resources. In the 90s, the United States had access to, 80-90% of all resources. Now, you don't. And so the amount of steak you get to eat every day is gone. Like things have changed. It's the Soylent Green cyberpunk dystopia to some extent for a lot of people. I mean, there's still food. You can grow vegetables. That's true.
I think that's just the mismanagement of the current system. All of that can be reversed in a short order of time if people take a concerted effort to go back to what's worked for thousands of years. But I did learn something interesting about these stone structures, the stone chambers, and how they would put these seeds inside of them. Here in New England, the Native Americans would, and it would, double, triple the output of these seeds when they would, turn over to crop at the end of the harvest season.
What are these, like seed silos?
Yeah, it's this type of electrification, but you would type in stone chambers of New England to see the proper picture of what we're looking at here. But yeah, so
Interesting.
this would create sort of like high pressure, low pressure situation that would create an electric charge, and which would be conducive for meditation. It would also induct that process that I was speaking of. And I think farmers do that with like a electroplate, like they put their seeds on a plate and it creates the same atmosphere difference of positive and negative charge, which does something for the seeds. I couldn't speak to the technical aspects of it, but the book in question that describes it is titled Seed of Knowledge, Stone of Plenty. That's what I learned recently. But yeah, I don't know. I think, going back to what we were saying earlier, if people implemented some of these lost techniques, also don't buy the book on Amazon. You can get the whole book for free if you go to the author's website. But yeah, these old techniques have just been sort of forgotten since the industrial age, and to the advantage of the chemical companies that want to sell us all these fertilizers and whatnot and keep us in ignorance about certain techniques that could free us from the system. I mean, there are guys on Instagram, I think we talked about it on this show a few weeks ago, with that Parker kid who's got the Tesla tech in his backyard. And so, I mean, there are ways that we could get out of the system and start to be productive and constructive with our energy.
Yeah, I'm not worried about running out of resources, really. I think I agree that's more of like a mismanagement or just like an intentional redirection of resources. But it's just kind of how people cluster into cities, and then that's its own problem. Then we're like, cities are overpopulated, and it's like you don't have to live in a city. I still eat a lot of steak, so I don't know if it's exactly true, but I don't know. Like my gut instinct is to reject modernity, like trad Chad meme guy. Like that's like my instinct, but I'm trying to force myself. And I've also been trying to force myself when I read like dystopian novels and futurists books like Arthur C. Clarke and all the people of that ilk and Chansey and all those people, to try to understand them more, because they're the ones that are having these ideas that I'm incapable of generating on my own, and then to just classify all of them as evil because they're new ideas or I don't understand it. So I'm really making like a big effort to not be so afraid of the future.
That's an interesting point. So I was thinking, I think about that and then I start to get really cynical or skeptical or pessimistic. But it's important to remember that these dreams and these books are really just realities that they're writing about that exist in Florida, or places like that. And they've already had geodesic domes with hydroponic systems that they were just saying, hey, what if this was elsewhere? They're not saying, what if this existed? They're saying, what if this that I'm at right now existed for other people?
Well, who had the idea originally to build the thing that they're at?
Well, I mean, Buckminster Fuller gets some credit. He said, Buckminster Fuller, he said, if 1 out of 100 people, if 10 out of a million, or even 10 out of a 10 in a generation, 10 every 100 years had some ideas, then the whole world, they would invent work into obsolescence every generation, basically. And that would be the way to progress. So first things first, deal with earthquakes, structural integrity, et cetera, builds the Buckminster Fullerene. Then deal with motor transportation, builds a 3-wheel car, the Buckminster vehicle. Where's that at? The interesting backwards freaking car. Where's that at? This thing right here. It looks like a SpongeBob spaceship kind of thing. But he thought this would be way better for other people. And they make things now that are based on this design that are, solar powered and that can charge themselves with supercapacitors. And there's a lot of logic to the shape because it's super safe, right? I think the design of the Tesla Cybertruck and the Tesla egg car, the original egg car frame, is based on the Buckminster Fuller car as well. And the Dymaxion, that's what it's called, but the Dymaxion. But they also did, some other stuff too. Like he invented the Buckminster Fullerene is named after him, Buckminster Fullerene, because they discovered in nature these natural carbon molecules that are shaped like geodesic domes or soccer balls. I would have just called it the soccer arena or the football arena or something like that, because it does. But that's only after Adidas built the Telstar soccer ball to look like the satellite, right? The Adidas.
So it's essentially like a 8-sided with like pentagons around it. That's interesting.
Right.
That's what a soccer ball is too. It's the same exact shape.
Yeah, but I don't know if it was always like that is the thing. So Telstar soccer ball is because there was a Telstar satellite, and it was 1978 or something like that. When did they do this? But this is like the original Telstar Durlast soccer ball. But before that, soccer balls didn't always look like that, right? So I'm not sure if I go back, if I type in like a soccer ball like 1905, like here, are you ever gonna find a
Oh, there we go. There's a different one.
yeah, they have different shapes before that point that are these swirls and stuff like that. So you're not going to find necessarily the same shape for soccer balls until you get to the Telstar soccer ball, and then the Telstar soccer ball is
Buckminster Fuller, was he generating these ideas or on his own, or like is it this circular thing, or like aliens had to do it, like people just can't come up with original ideas?
No, I mean, like people were living. So there's like people that live in isolation. And that's another thing about academia, is that academia is cool in that sense, because if you live at the university and you can build all this crazy stuff that you're not allowed to keep, then they're building these temples to learning. Right. And so at the time, it was the perfect fusion of all this money coming into the school. They're not allowed to privatize it. So it's all open source. Like there's a lot of positivity. Unix came out of the military industrial complex funding academia. Right. So, but they also could do things like have a hydroponics. And it's weird because that is what should take off. This is the way your house should look. Every wall should have these PVC pipes with sponges absorbing a organic liquid. And there shouldn't be any plastic case on the thing. It shouldn't say Sony. It shouldn't say Apple. It shouldn't be a commercial corporatist nightmare. It should just be a minimalist technical tool that every wall, it's filtering the oxygen, it's getting the carbon monoxide out of the way. That's just the way it should be.
Philosophical question: the people that have the ability to create technologies that can set mankind free in this way, like free from resource problems, do they have a duty to do that, or is their higher calling to take all the resources of mankind to fuel their further ideas? Which is what we have happening now. We have the people who are the creatives who are become billionaires, and they're basically using the resource, using humanity as a resource instead of setting us free. They're enslaving us to become a battery to fuel their next idea. So what should they be doing? It's like you come up with one idea that's for the betterment of mankind, and then you give it all away and set mankind free, or do you find a way to turn mankind into a battery to fuel your further ideas? Which is better?
What do you guys think?
I'm just thinking about how I can make one of those things and put it in my apartment. I've been buying herbs from the store in the little pots that they sell. But yeah.
Dude, Giant for $20 again, you can have both. And then Stefan, The Russians Are Coming, 1966 comedy, which is a great film that Wendy Schall's dad, Richard Schall's in, actually. We've interviewed the daughter of the guy who's the star of that movie. But yeah, I mean, growing food around your house is an awesome idea. But in general, so many of the things that should produce energy cost us money. That is true. Like this thing probably costs like $200 or something crazy, instead of just putting your vegetables on your wall all the time. So what's the deal with that? Yeah. Are we going to need to take, the Carl Schwab thing is take everybody's money,
right?
Because they're not using it right. Right. We're not using our money right. We're buying crazy stuff like this.
So who's to tell him what he should do? These people only interact with each other. We have these futurist billionaires that their only limitation is their other, their peers, basically. Like they only need to interact with their peers. However they decide to treat us is up to how generous they're feeling. And we really don't have any equity in that because we're not capable of doing the things that they do. For better or for worse.
But it goes back to capitalism, where they'll make you buy that contraption because the Rockefellers, right, put petroleum in everything. So it's like, here, let's double dip. Let's sell the petroleum and then let's sell the stuff to the people who make the stuff to put it in that stuff. So, and force people to buy it. You know what I mean? So it's a vicious cycle, but it goes back to that because
It's bad for us, but they're coalescing power for themselves because they're the creative, have the ability to do things that have never been done before. You know, if you gave me all the power of the Rockefellers, I don't know if I'd be able to produce like one new piece of technology or anything. I'm not saying it's a good or a bad thing. I'm just doing like a thought experiment where if
they're living the metaverse though, they're living the real world to them is the metaverse. Because what are you supposed to do with all this money? It's like Monopoly. They're playing a real life game of Monopoly. Right. And we don't know that we're the Truman, right? They know that they're Truman in the Truman Show. We don't know that we're Truman in the Truman Show. So it's one thing.
Things they want to do. They want to coalesce amounts of power that have never been coalesced, except for like, you know, King Solomon or like
just because though,
or something like that, to build something like a Tower of Babel, to build a hadron collider. I mean, it costs like $3 trillion. So they want to enslave us and coalesce. They want to use us like batteries, like in the Matrix, to fuel their futurist ideas. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but otherwise those things will never come into existence. We won't have rockets. We won't be trying to go to space or pierce the veil or whatever your perspective on the shape of the earth is. These things just wouldn't be done. We would just all be homesteading forever would be the alternative to that. And we'd be happier and suffering less maybe in some ways.
Hold on. Why would that be the alternative?
Holly for $20. Number one. Thank you very much. It's awesome. Why would the alternative? Yeah.
I think that would be the alternative because, you know,
wouldn't it be a alternative or an alternative?
Yeah.
Like, why is it the alternative?
I can't think of another.
There
one.
we go.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
There we go. And so the same people, you just said it yourself, like, you know, they set it up. They create the foundation for you to step into so that you'll go and continue that system. And so these are the same people who are like, oh yeah, here are your two choices. You got to be metaverse or you got to become a Stone Age farmer. Those are your two choices. I'm like, that's the most ridiculous thing in the world. Like there's so many, like you said, where the original idea is going to come from. The original ideas come from when you step out of that system. We're like, when I use the word creative, I'm not talking about art. I'm talking about an approach to life. And it's so like art may be like in the context of the culture, like, yeah, that is a creative expression, but that's not creativity. Creativity is whatever it is that we're like people, and we're going to do that creativity in the system that we're going to be in. So if we got two choices right now, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. Like you said yourself, like we're formed by our environment. A Stone Age farmer could never imagine like what the internet and all of this sort of stuff goes. But so we can't take that idea out of the consciousness of all the children that have been born since 2007. So if they had that consciousness and they're like, you know what, I'm not going to play around with this system anymore. Like whatever, maybe we homestead for a week, maybe we homestead for a year, but that brain is going to be in there. There's going to be creativity like we can't imagine. Like that is to your point. We can't imagine because the only pictures we have are from their dystopian novels, and then like the thing they're trying to sell us. So It's like, that's why I like to go back to the biggest impossible.
Right. We're afraid of the future because all the movies are about dystopic futures.
Or Stone Age farmers.
Yeah.
Those are your two choices.
Flintstones, Jetsons, it's Brave New World.
There's no natural law to prevent great men from doing great things. And when I say great, I don't mean good. I would say like Rockefeller, they're great because they've done things no one else could ever even conceive of doing or would be able to do or follow in their footprints or anything. So Buckminster Fuller is great. Tesla was great. You know what I mean? So there's no natural law that prevents them doing whatever they want to do. These people are going to coalesce power by their nature. So, I mean, you know, they would have to make the decision to just homestead and not use their gift, you know, but it seems like when they do use their gift,
you get to make the decision whether or not you continue to feed it.
For sure. And that's what I'm arguing with right now is maybe I should, maybe the best thing I can do is be fuel for these people who would do things that I could never dream of. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just doing a thought experiment about it, you know? Oh shoot, he's out.
That's it.
So this is what I would think. I would think like you make a valid point because you're like, I can't really see the future. And that's a very valid point. But what you can do is look at the past. And you can go and say, like, how did we get here? And who are the people who told us? And what are the other things they said? And maybe not like take it away like good or bad and say like, well, do I want this or do I not want this? And I'll be like, you know what? The same people who taught me about war, the same people like the masterminds of like warfare. Yeah, they gave me the internet. The same, like, you're giving me a system that only exists if there's still slave labor. And then, it's like the whole thing.
But the internet doesn't need to be that way. That's the thing. Like all the hackers that tried to build peer-to-peer reality, like it wasn't going to be that way. Military
Where did the original equipment come from?
Well, so that's so when we talk about the military industrial complex, look at MIT, you look at Berkeley, Unix, like all of it was built for Berkeley software distribution. It was for schools originally, and so it's that mini computer terminals could connect to one.
From this guy named Lickletter. You go read about this
DARPA, but DARPA is more specific. DARPA's if you're talking about the internet in terms of like
I'm talking about a concept. I'm
network.
talking about an idea.
But just having a network in and of itself was an academic idea originally, right? Like having just a bunch of terminals connected to one machine.
Well, that's definitely where it came into fruition. Like it's like what you were saying. It's like
those kids weren't all evil. That's all I'm saying. MIT wasn't fully evil. Some of those kids had some good ideas.
I used my personal story. I used to work in Reston, Virginia, like at the companies that like built the infrastructure, like MFS, UUNet. Like I was a product manager there. Like I know the history and I know the people.
I know they definitely killed. They probably killed Dudley Buck, so that's fair.
Is where the ideas originated from. Like when I say like the idea of decentral, like what is it? Like ARPANET's TCP, like that whole idea of like taking information and breaking it up and sending it in all these different sort of ways to reconfigure. And that's like kind of like, that's our story of how we understand like it came out of like the DARPANET history. But if you look at the guy who is credited for coming up with that idea and like, this is what we want to go sell, boss. He actually was the head of, I think it was called behavioral sciences. He wasn't a computer technician. He was thinking in a military perspective about how to control behavior. And this is what he came up with. And then the rest is like a bunch of dominoes. You stack them up and you push them over, and then it's going to happen. Like, I mean, that's what the international, what is it called? The international school, which is right outside. It's IAS. It's like where they take all the greatest minds and they put them together. The best academic minds are given like a free year to just go and hang out and just shoot the shit. And the people behind it are like, I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to put him together with this guy and that guy. And I'm just going to let them figure it out. It's just like Skunk Works at what was, whoever did Skunk Works, was that like McDonnell Douglas or one of those big like military industrial airplanes? Like they take the brains, you nailed it. It's human resources. None of us are bad guys. We were born into a bad system. And we become whatever we're born into. That's the nature of our consciousness.
Do you ever see play cable? I was trying to remember, television play cable.
What is that?
So long ago, there was this thing you could attach to your television, and it was called the play cable. And it plugged into where you would attach a cartridge. But what that cartridge would do is it would connect to a phone line, except it wasn't a phone line for the play cable, actually. It was a cable line to your TV. But only certain people could do this. People that lived in places like, Silicon Valley, Southern California, Utah, I think Kansas City, Carnegie Mellon, MIT, Harvard, Lincoln. These are the places. I think New York also had a couple. There was a couple places that could access the play cable. And so they could only get it to work for so long. And
so I'm still confused because I had one of those in televisions, the larger object on the left.
Right. But then they added
the thing on the right.
They only added it if you lived in the right neighborhood, but it was like $20 a month. You could download games and play them against people across the world.
They had that in 1977.
Right. Yeah. So this is the play cable from, I think, 77. I think this is what it was. Play cable 1980. Oh, they had tons of games because you could download games. It was like your hotel room has games. You could play the games over the cable back in 1980. There's another one called Atari Game Line.
The television.
Atari Game Line really did use the phone, and you could connect a modem to your Atari. And some people could do this, but not everybody also for some reason. And not every game worked for it either because they were worried about some of the concerns where you could record the call and you might be able to play the game again. So they had to build new ways of having multiplayer to make sure you didn't download the whole game and then just send back the responses to the game, right? So very complicated systems, but they tested this on so many people. They had so many, tens of thousands of kids across America and different people that had access to this technology, and they figured out exactly what they were going to do. For instance, recording on cassette tape the game so they could play it later, and then making sure that wasn't possible when they introduced it to the many millions. And similarly with Napster, right? Like Napster, they showed a generation how to download music. But then from there, they made millions of people download iTunes. They figured out how to do DMC, copyright, and everything. DMR, right? Digital rights management. DRM. Ugh, it's all evil.
Damn.
That's crazy, man. I'd never heard of that. I had the Atari and all that stuff. I had no idea. Well, there was no internet to look it up. Like I always bring up.
But apparently there was.
Yeah,
apparently.
Yeah, there was an ARPANET.
Available to everyone.
I knew a guy called Youngman Kim that had all the Mortal Kombat fatalities written down in a notebook.
Wow. Yeah, that's true. I had a cheat code club at school, a gaming club, but we had like a binder that had I had all the different games, cheat codes in a binder, and they were all organized.
That's right. Yeah. So how did somebody tell me this? Like Justin Bailey, that's the code you put into Metroid to play as Samus Aran from the beginning of the game. How did everyone learn what it was? It was never said on TV. Was it in Nintendo Power Magazine or somebody? But everybody knew that code. Just everybody up, down, down, left, right, BA, select, start for the Contra code.
What year was this?
There was no internet, but there was already like an internet of just human like communication somehow.
But when was the game? When 1980 something or what?
80s probably. I mean,
there could have been Usenet, and then did we do the thing where we talked about CERN internet, right? CERN web browser. So this is a key thing, and I wish I'd focused on this before more. If you go to the birth of the web, you go to CERN, right? And so I was doing this thing where I was studying like Steve Jobs a bunch, and I was remembering that Steve Jobs, when he built the next computer to destroy Apple, the only freaking people who bought it were the Swiss CERN company, because the only people could afford like a $20,000, $10,000 machine. But he used it to invent the internet, essentially using hypertext and HTTP. And so they even restored it recently, and you can use it. I think, is it here? Where do I find the thing? It's so browse the first web. Is it? Oh, it isn't right here. This isn't exactly the way it's supposed to look, though. Oh man, where is like use accessing like the 1960s technology. You can connect. They've got people that have been building machines that are able to access this using the old 60s computers. An Apple One has a XB.
I think I mentioned this last week or a week before that. There's like a Windows 93 modulator that I found with like search engines that give you results from 1993, not like current search engine results.
I think I found, is this it? I think I finally got it. Okay, cool. Boom. So this is the worldwideweb.cern.check.ch/browser. And you can imagine in 1989, when this was created, this is what you would do. You would have these, boxes, they'd roll up and down. You'd be able to navigate with this panel here, open panels. It would have a hypermedia browser editor, and it could be all by Tim Berners-Lee, a British scientist who was working for CERN, using the Next computer, which Next was built for Apple, but it was really built on Unix and BSD software, so an academic brand of open source kernel that they'd built. And so, yeah, they basically, it's also interesting that the first looking glass for magical, technology, CERN has it. CERN invents the looking glass. They're able to go on the internet with this thing. And also why it's so interesting that they make sure that it's still portable. And I don't just mean like from one use or something, but you can use data from the future. If you were to send data from the future through this, it would be, you could read it, and then you would be able to take that and you could maybe build something in the past that was built around the specifications that you were sending yourself from the future. So CERN has got the looking glass, which is pretty cool.
I didn't even know CERN existed before the Hadron Collider. I thought that was like they formed the company just for that.
No. Yeah, no. Yeah, dude, CERN is nuts. Web browser. They actually have a
company.
I mean, what is it then?
It's more like what would you call like the EU?
Yeah, it's like a multinational
cabal,
global couldn't. Yeah.
Like, I don't know what the word is to describe it, but you're right. It's like all of these different countries fund money for it. And like the different countries have, and it gives them, I think, access to it as well as like what the agreement is.
All rights removed. Think about it. Capitis diminutio maxima. Because it's the acronym means that it's also all letters are removed, but it's
like what they have in Antarctica. Like there's no nations that are allowed down there, but they can allow research organizations with scientists from multiple different countries.
The CERN Council is the highest authority of the organization, is responsible for all important decisions. It controls CERN's activities in scientific, technical, and administrative matters. Okay, and there's 23, of course, member states. Each state has a vote and requires a simple majority. Okay.
Wow.
So yeah, nations get to be part of it if they're into the nuke.
Who's going to stop them from doing whatever they want to do? You know,
like, who are those people? Like who like represents the United States? Like who gets to be the CERN representative? Like is it a diplomatic position?
Yeah, we should have ambassadors to corporations. That's
we
a great
should elect Andreas.
Right. It's like we've got a language to describe like all these other structures, but we're struggling to say like what exactly is this? Because not in our lexicon that we know like this thing exists. Is this diplomatic? Is this
supranational body? Is what I call these things. Supranational bodies. They exceed
supranational
power. Yeah, they're not extranational, being that they're outside of nations. Their power is much greater than nation states. So they're supranational, like the UN, NATO. I mean, they have way more power than their composite nations.
So who is this person who's representing the United States there? Like, is he a scientist?
I don't know, but they're a sovereign body.
That would be, I think, kind of an interesting question.
Yeah. To be a real sovereign body, you have to be more powerful than whoever would want to enslave you. So the idea that like citizens are sovereign is a joke, you know, because the nation is already, you know, calls the shots. But these people are actual sovereigns, which is, you know, back to the question, is that how you would want to live your life if you had that kind of power? Or would you be like Tesla and be like, I don't want to enslave anyone, so I just won't be a great man. I'll just live in my apartment with this pigeon.
Right, because you know that's a good point. You could build this huge evil empire, take all the money from all the people that could stop you, including everybody else, and then give everybody a utopia for 1,000 years. Maybe
that's what we're counting on these people to do, is accumulate all this power through evil, and then at the end be like, psych, now I use it all for good and cash in all my chips. But we've never really
the key word in CERN is European, because if you look at Europe, their power is dwindling on the global scale. You're being marginalized more and more by the rest of the world as historically third world nations gain more footing in the global stage. I think it's a desperate attempt to maintain power by creating some kind of super weapon, and maybe it calls into question the whole nuclear process and what nuclear weapons are, since they're calling this, hadron collider a sort of nuclear device,
it's a terminal point in different space-time moments. You've got a terminal point.
I just mean like, considering the name of it, right? The word nuclear is in the title. The word Europe is in the title. These are all, they're not calling it like the Europe's time portal organization or anything like that.
I mean, the 666 logo is pretty much like it's kind of hard to ignore.
Yeah.
Logo.
Well, but is it just a smoke screen that they would name it something confusing like that? Or is that speaking to like the broader interest of like, okay, we need something bigger than a nuclear weapon, because that only worked for the past 100 years. You need something new. People are figuring out. Other countries are building them, or maybe they're not real at all, and it's just been a hoax the whole time.
We already see UFOs that can deactivate nuclear weapons or any kind of weapon. So
right.
Obviously, greater power.
Think about if they could open up a portal underneath the city. What does that do?
Yeah, some X-Men stuff like Kitty Pryde, phase you into a wall.
Well,
send you back in time. Just send your whole nation back in time.
I just want to say thank you for allowing me to invite Mike on, and also inviting Juan on. This has been another fun episode of Wednesday Ultra. I'm pretty tired. I don't know if you guys have more to say, but I did want to clarify towards the beginning. We were talking about the starboard, and that starboard Mike showed is actually the model that he created for sale. His starboard is much more unique and very intricate, and has a really cool character to it. But yeah, I guess those are going to be for sale at some point. I don't know when. Mike, are they already available to pre-order or something like that? If people are interested?
They're only available when I do like workshops.
Got
So
it.
like right now, that's the only way which people can get them. I mean, I guess some people contact me and send me an email directly, but
Never know who's watching.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
somebody in paralysis.
Well, if that's the case, then if you're interested in learning more, yeah, you just if you send me a message, I'll tell you more about it.
Yeah, and he's also got a YouTube channel as well, and Ross Ben and him just put out 2 new episodes of their show from the 40th Parallel. I'm just doing all your plugs for you, Mike.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Ross Ben, like he's a Rasta?
Like he's a Rasta.
Oh, that's what's up. All right.
40th Parallel, Mysteries of the 40th Parallel, 40th Parallel with
You
Ross
look up
Ben.
Susquehanna Alchemy, you'll find his YouTube channel. It's SUSQUEHANNA.
I'm crossing my fingers. It comes up right here.
Oh, yeah,
Boom.
there.
Did it. Bam. Sweet.
Just for all the
Subscribe.
listeners.
Yeah. So you got a whole bunch of stuff here. This looks great talking about alchemy. What's some of the stuff you have on your show?
I mean, I use the word alchemy in a general sense in the terms of like how things can change from lesser value, mysteriously change from lesser value to higher value, from lead to gold. So I do a lot of, I mean, it depends upon where you look on the timeline, but in the past I did a lot of what I'd call conspiracy ghost stories. Like making really interesting connections between things which may or may not be connected, but at the very least is thought-provoking. But it's ultimately all about, for me, it's consciousness. You know, it's about understanding how the mind works, and how the mind, by mastering the mind, you're able to master the build, if you will, which is like, you know, our dance with reality. That's what it's ultimately all about.
Legit. Yeah. And one-on-one podcast. I'm trying to pull yours up. I'm sorry. One sec. Boom. One-on-one podcast. What's up, bro? I know you
Find
got
my newest journal, The Occultist Monday, on my website.
Let me back up a bit. Let me do a spotlight here. This is sweet. What? I love the card. This is black and yellow. Okay. Occultist Monday. What is this?
So this is an occult journal, esoteric, a bunch of interesting 24 pages. It's called the Armchair Occultist Reader's Digest.
We get a little sneak peek inside. You open up to like the chapter page.
Yeah, table of contents, definitely.
Yeah.
This is a prototype, but here we go. This is a prototype, but you got the homunculus part 1, Aristotelian biology, cryptic and cipheric organization of the modern alphabet, adrenochrome unveiled, Biblio Man C by your boy Mystic Mark, and possessed states. So we have a bunch of contributors, and you can find that on my website, the101podcast.com, and check it out. I've shipped out about 15 of them, so people.
That looks fantastic. Great job,
bro. Let me and you can get there from the one-on-one podcast. Make sure you're subscribed there. You're gonna want to jump on there. You can get his new journal from this link right here as well. And then here's a bunch of links to get there. So for show. And then Venice Beach Dub Club, bro. You've got this new single out. You guys go to linktree.vbdc.
Dropping this Friday. Yeah, I'm trying to push people to pre-order it now, which is the way you hit #1 on iTunes, which I've done with a few of my previous singles and albums. Hit #1 reggae with these kind of truther messages. It's just an important way to put a wrinkle in the timeline. You know what I mean? So go pre-order it if you can. And all my links are on my linktree/VBDC. You can find my YouTube there and everything. Subscribe and follow everywhere. I super appreciate it. And this song is gonna be dope. It's a you can guess what it's about, but it's from the perspective of the pharma bad guys themselves. So a little fun one, some good features. Cozy 19 actually was a teacher and like a wellness expert on Instagram that I used to interview on my Instagram show. And then he got fired from his job because he wouldn't take the jab, and he became a rapper, and he's actually sick because he has all this medical information that he puts into
awesome. They took our jab. Bro. Oh, that's brutal. All right. I'll have to meditate on that. Mark, with my family thinks I'm crazy. Everybody loves this freaking amazing every time there's a new episode. Michael Hoffman, the occult Renaissance, Church of Rome, Vatican Usury, Jesuits, Diabolical Popes. I mean,
and I just want to say, thank you, of course, for having me on. As always, actually, my YouTube channel's grown by quite a lot since I've been on this show. So I want to thank the audience for supporting me. And also my plugs are Mike and Juan's plugs as well, because Mike and I host a show together. You can find it on a podcast feed by the same name as Mike's YouTube channel. So that's Susquehanna Alchemy, wherever you listen to podcasts. And then Juan and I, you could see right there in the video section, we just did an episode last night of Illuminati Confirmed. We had Ryan Burns on for a second time.
Nice.
And needless to say, if he's a returning guest, he's confirmed. He's probably in the Illuminati. So go and check that out.
Is he's not Mensa guy, is it? Oh, it is.
Oh, Chris is a co-host as well, but yeah, Ryan is not Chris.
Always asking what degree you are. You know how it goes. All right. Well, that's pretty awesome. Thanks a lot for being here. And guys, did I miss anybody? Did I get everything? I'm always worried about that. Everything good? Yeah.
Got everybody.
Okay, good. All right. Well, we'll see you guys next week. Thanks a lot for being here.
Thank you, guys.
Later.